Hello everyone! In this video I will show you how you can create a super cool scrollytelling experience that is really fun to make, very easy, and you don't need to write any code for it. So let's hop right in. Here we are in the Unity editor. I just downloaded the scrollytelling sample that you can get from the Explore Samples window. It's this one here, Scrollytelling and Cursor Interaction. And I just downloaded it and opened the example scene and exported the project as is. I just showed you that. And just to show you how it's set up, you can select the export game object, and there you find a Needle Engine component which lets us interface with our web project right from Unity. And here we can click the Open Code Editor, which basically opens the Visual Studio Code, which is a totally normal modern web project basically. And as usual, here's our HTML file. It does nothing fancy, it just has the Needle Engine component. It defines a click-through attribute, which I will explain in another video, and it sets the background color to transparent. The rest of the file is just our content that is displayed on the website. So for example, I can show you when I change the text, my fancy website, and I save it and go back to Chromium. To Chrome, you see my fancy website pops up over here, and it works like normal web development. I can put it right next to each other, I can make my edits, I can change the CSS to whatever color I like. So for example, color red, let's make the text red. It works as you know it. So the sample comes with this project or with this web project basically as a template to get you started immediately. It's easy to make it work for any web project. You basically just select your web project's location on disk, and this is where your 3D scene will be exported to. And assuming your web project has Needle Engine installed, it can be used right away. So let's look at the scene and what makes it work. The main thing for scroll to be used without writing code is our new scroll follow component. And what it does is basically it lets you take the scroll on the website, like the scroll Y position at the moment, and apply it to some other component in your scene. And in this example, we do apply it, like you select the target array and you also get the tooltip with some information what it can support or what it cannot support. And in this example, we control our timeline with it. That means we just plop the Unity timeline in the scroll follow component. It happens to be on the same game object. It's right here. I can open the timeline and scrub through the timeline, and you see in the scene are just the lights changing at the moment. When we are at the top of the page, like at the beginning of the scroll experience, the time of the timeline will be at the start, and at the very end of our page, it will be at the end of our timeline. This example, I just set up different animators in the scene that are controlled by the timeline. For example, here, over the course of this animation, we change Attractor settings on the Attractor component in the scene, or we have some lights in the scene, and you already have seen that. So we change the light color and the light direction over the course of the timeline. And when we go back, let's go back to our browser. I can demonstrate you when I scroll down, and let's look at the color of the spheres. In this case, you see the color turns from green to this purplish color. When we scroll further down, you will see, okay, now it turns black and one light goes up. And this effect is achieved by just applying negative color, which is something that is incredibly underused. It's so cool. If you just use negative light intensity, you can pull out the color of objects in the scene. You will not really see it in the Unity editor because it's like a little bit unconventional to do it. If you have PBR rendering, you normally don't have that. Like, it's not realistic. It does exist with occlusion volumes and stuff like that, but the Unity editor cannot really render it, so it just clamps at 0. But we can still control the value here, light intensity, and we do that for both our lights in the scene. So we have 2 directional lights here, and they are both controlled by the timeline, basically, or let's say by the scroll follow, which is controlling the timeline. It gives us really a lot of flexibility and creative control. Like, for example, I can create, let's say, just some cube in the center of the screen. And if I export it like that, you see it will do nothing. It just sticks at the top. It's not moving with the other objects. And that is because the other objects are driven by the attractor components. So everything else, like the spheres in the scene, they have rigid bodies, and the attractor components are set up to pull the rigid bodies that are assigned in this array towards them. And our cube that we just created is not pulled. So let's just add it to our array. Oh, I need to add a rigid body to our cube to make it physical, and just to show you what happens if I don't do anything, the cube just falls down. Let's do that again. Yeah, because now our cube is physical. We can also turn off gravity if we want to, and now it will be floating around here. I mean, other objects can still push it and collide with it. That's why it's now floating in the background, which is fine, but not really what we want. We want it to follow attractor. Wait, where's the attractor? Okay, so this is the negative attractor in the scene. This means it's basically an object that is following our cursor. Maybe I just explain it to you first. Maybe you see it already here. The little circle that is following my mouse, this is the negative attractor, or the attractor that is following the mouse, and this one is also animated by the timeline over time to sometimes push objects away and sometimes pull them towards them. In the scene, it's this one. So here at the beginning, it's pushing them away with a negative strength of -2. Then later in the scene, they're purplish, and this one pulls the objects towards the cursor, so it has a positive strength. And later again, it gets negative and then positive again. And you can also see that when you interact with the page, like when I move my cursor here, you see the -1 force pushes the object just very slightly away from my cursor. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then I scroll down, and when it turns purple, the force becomes positive. Now it's 5. And now the objects are pulled towards the cursor. And then we scroll down a little bit further. The force becomes negative again. And now everything is pushed away. Like, wait, there's one point where it really pushed away, like here. And we scroll further down, and now everything is pulled towards the cursor once again. Just a little bit, not as much as before. Yeah, and that is controlled by this timeline, or by this animation here, which is in the timeline, this clip here. And for example, I can change the strength just by editing the value here. Let's make it push the objects away a little bit stronger. And you can see it maybe. It's a little bit stronger than before. Let's maybe increase it even more. Let me select the timeline again. Select the clip and maybe make it to, I don't know, -20 and export. And now everything is pushed away very, very strong. A lot more than before. Right now it's just falling down. It's not really what we want. We also wanted to interact with the other objects. I have the attractor array here. I just drag over my cube into the target in this one, and there's another attractor actually in the scene. So we also add it to this array. And I also wanted to be pushed back. We already put it in that array. And since -20 is too strong for my taste, I return it to the -3. Export again. You see now, okay, the cube does basically behave just like all the other objects. We can just edit the materials in the scene. I don't have to write any code. I don't need to understand like what is happening in the background. I can just be creative with that. Like we can change the colors of our objects super easily. And now they are like a little bit golden. We can change the light colors if we want to. For example, now we have this, what is that? The purple color. Select the correct keyframe. This is one of the lights over here. We can change the color of that light and maybe make it pink. And the other one should be pink as well, I guess. Why not? Maybe we can crank up the intensity. I'm not sure. Maybe just white, but not as extreme. And export again. And when we scroll down, we have the pinkish color and the white. And it doesn't look like that in Unity right now because the timeline has not evaluated, but you see it here when you animate or when you edit the scene. It has the same color. It looks just like in the browser and works without any hassle. And just like the light that we just edited, we can also animate the colors of the objects in our scene. So to do that, let's just take one of the spheres, and they all share the same material, I believe. And we drag it into the timeline and select Add Animation Track. And what it will do is it will just create a new animation track, add an animator component to this sphere in the scene. Very simple. Just so you know, you can always change the target of the object that is being animated by just dragging in a new object in the timeline over here. And now we can start animating by clicking the record button over here, and you see the timeline is now red. That means Unity is recording what we change in the scene. So we can scroll down in the material of that object. And if we now change the color of the object to, let's say, green, it will have created a little keyframe over here in the timeline. Maybe make the green a little bit bluish, like this. Scroll to the end of the timeline and make, I don't know, some pink. Why not? And you see now we have in the timeline this little animation playing the scene in Unity and the timeline. And a lot is changing. Of course, as said before, the objects in the scene in edit mode are not moving, not following the cursor because they are driven by the physics simulation, which is not active in edit mode, of course. If we would have added or animated the positions of the objects in the scene, you would also see that, of course. We can stop the recording mode. And what I like to do is turn this default animation clip in the timeline into a real clip. And the easiest way to do it is just to right click on the track and select Convert to Clip Track. And that will basically take the whole animation that you did so far in the scene into this clip. You can then move around, scale, or copy and paste. So if you want to, we can copy this clip to repeat it basically. You don't have to do that. You can also, if you just want to loop, you can do that as well. And also have multiple different recordings down here, and then arrange them on the timeline just like that. And you don't need to animate the whole sequence. You can just animate some sequence that you know you like and copy and paste it where you want it to play. This is really powerful because you can combine that with audio and music and whatever you want. Okay, let's delete this copy because we don't really need it. And just to see how it looks, let's export the scene. And as said before, because all of the objects share the same material in Unity, they also now share the color animation in the web. So we have that animation from the green to the pink. Let's maybe move it a little bit closer to the beginning, because in the end, as said before, we have the negative light, which changes the appearance again, which I want to show you later. Okay, now you see that color animation here in the web as well. And here's the beautiful pink and the green. So you can be really creative. If you don't want all the objects in your web scene to have that color animation, what you can do is just assign an individual material to it. So let's just copy that material and assign it to our sphere that we animated in Unity. And now when we export again, you see in the browser only that one sphere is animated, because it has a unique material, and all the other objects stay the same as before. We can use that to our advantage and play around with it just as we like. We can also don't want this cube to be animated by physics. We want it to be animated manually over time. So I just removed the rigid body, and to be really clean, I should also remove it from my attractor arrays, because the rigid body is now gone. And I can animate that cube over time as well. Just as before, we drag it down to the timeline and create a new animation track. And let's start at the first keyframe, at the first frame of our timeline. Click the record button. Now we can move the cube, or we can scale the cube. So let's say the cube is very small at the beginning. Then around in the middle of our website, it should become quite big, and it should, let's say it rotates 180 degrees, and maybe it's tilted a little bit. We can also check with the game view, for example, to see how it looks. Or we can change our scene view to align with the camera in scene, like that. Get a better understanding of how it will look in the browser. So now the cube animates big. Okay, now I should add some keyframes for the rotation, so all zeros. And it rotates when it becomes bigger. Yeah, we can rotate it like that. That's the end. Then just scale down again. And now we click play, and the thing should play back in our website. Let's start from the beginning. Here we have the small cube. You scroll down, we see the cube turns big. And imagine this cube could be your product, your shoe, whatever you want to show off in your website. You can be creative, you can create cool website experiences, and you don't have to know how to code this in Free.js or in Needle Engine. If you want to, you can, of course, write custom scripts, custom components. Needle Engine is really open to that. We are very flexible. Everything you see here that is done with the built-in components, you can do yourself. You can learn from the components that ship with Needle Engine. And you can look into the source code as well. Just click these little blue icons and you get right into the source code of the Needle Engine core components to learn how that is done, how it's set up. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction in our new Scrollytelling template, and I'm looking forward to see what you guys will come up with, what you can create or want to create. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.